Good morning, friends. Let me welcome you to another session of our discussion of Sam Selvon's 1956 novel, The Lonely Londoners. If you remember, this is the fourth installment of our discussion, and we have already discussed the West Indian writing, especially the migrant literature, of which Sam Selvon was a producer and The Lonely Londoner was a product. I have also given an introduction to The Lonely Londoner by situating it in the tradition of post-colonial writing, in the tradition of West Indian literature, in the tradition of migrant literature. Yesterday, I have also given you a thumbnail sketch of the plot. Now, if you remember, I have already pointed out that it's a disjointed, fragmentary, episodic narrative. It actually gives you vignettes of the life of a group of West Indian immigrants now residing in London. And I have also told you, if you remember, that a cogent and coherent plot analysis or plot summary of this novel is impossible, because this is not so much a logically, chronologically connected story. Again, I am telling you, it is actually giving us, and I am deliberately using the continuous tense. It is giving us a peep at dislocated, deterritorialized life of immigrants that defies and transcends the barrier of time and place. You have to understand this. You see, if you think about another novel written much later by a Bangladeshi writer like Monica Ali, I am talking about The Brick Lane, you will see that certain similar issues are dealt with. If you think about another novel, say Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, you will again see that because this is a specimen, this novel by Sam Selvon is a specimen of what is called migrant literature, diasporic literature. You will see that the issues that it deals with are in a way common. The question of social mobility, the question of social accommodation, the question of racism, the question of identity, that of, say, love and sex, the question of community and the individual. All these things become very, very important. Even those of you who come from families that were chose to move from the erstwhile Bangladesh, or the erstwhile East Pakistan, or even Purbo Bongo, East Bengal. You have to understand, they have had to face the same issues. The question of social acceptance, the question of financial stability, the question of upward mobility, the question of identity. All these things are very, very immediate. Are you getting my point?
Yes.
Are you getting my point? Think about it. Suppose somebody moves from Bangladesh to West Bengal. Again, think about it. Suppose I am moving from, or I have moved from Bangladesh to West Bengal. What will I encounter? What did I encounter? What did my family encounter in that hypothetical situation? Or those who had gone from India to Pakistan. Think about it. New land, new people, new realities. Somebody who was at one time an important person in his home community have now become a refugee, Udvastu, Muhajir. There will always be those who have moved to the new place much earlier. Old acquaintances, maybe. There are those who really want to work honestly. And there are those who want to live on the charity of others, maybe of the government. Those who are very socially ambitious. Those who are greatly attached to the spirit of their own community. Those who want to go away from that community. All these things mean that there are different kinds of men, and they have their different kinds of lives, different realities, different choices, and all that. Are you getting my point?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Think about it. Who are the major characters in this particular novel? Most of the important characters in this novel are black. They are basically immigrants. They are immigrants. They have come from other places to the United Kingdom. There are people who have come earlier, like Cap or Captain, a Nigerian, like Moses, a Trinidadian, like Tolroy, a Jamaican, and so on and so forth. Similarly, there are those who have come just now. For example, Galahad or Henry Oliver, a Trinidadian man, Lewis, a Jamaican man, a relative of Tolroy. Similarly, there are those who are greatly attached to their communities. For example, Moses, who says that I will get hell if I don't, from time to time, engage in a old talk. Talk about their old lives in the West Indies with members of his own community, the West Indian immigrants. Similarly, there are others who want to leave this behind. People like Bart, people like Davis. Now, Bart, what does Bart do? He is light-skinned, compared to 5 past midnight, he is a fairer one in a way. So he actually tries to palm himself off as a Latino and not as a black man, a West Indian. Now just think about it. There is hierarchy of marginality also. There are some who are more marginalized, there are some who are less marginalized. So a Latino, a man of color, a colored man, and a black man, they actually occupy different rungs, different levels in the social hierarchy. They are both marginalized, but their extent of marginality and marginalization differs. Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you will see that, there is racism. There is racism. Even though it is not overt racism as it is in the United States. It is covert racism. Manufactured by and maintained by the old British diplomacy. I'm quoting from the text. Now Galahad asks Moses, are the conditions the same in the United States and the United Kingdom? Galahad is curious to know. And Moses says, no. You see, in the United States, they hate you. The whites hate the blacks and the people of color. And they tell it to your face. So you know where you stand. There is no humbug about it. Nothing fishy. It's all in the open. On the contrary, in England or in the United Kingdom, there is racism. There is no denying that. But everything is in a way whitewashed. Behind the veneer of politeness. They will not take you on as an employee. But they will not tell you, oh, dirty nigger, go away. They will just tell you, I'm sorry, but there is no vacancy. You think about it. If a black man commits a mistake in work, if it's a white man, he will get the verbal medicine. If it is the United States, the black man will get the sack with a kick maybe. But in Britain, he will be fired, he will be sacked, but in a polite manner. So there is racism. Now, most of these West Indian men, because they are first generation immigrants, in most cases they have come leaving behind their women folk. In Trinidad, in Jamaica, in the Dominican Republic or in any place, Guyana or whatever. So obviously, here in the foreign land, they need love, they need sex. In a way, often they become enamored of white women. Because Having a physical relationship with a white woman gives them an added pleasure. The pleasure of exotic sexual attachments. But in many cases, it is also a means of getting socially or financially empowered, achieving stability, achieving respectability, or at least toleration. On the contrary, many British women, many white women have fetishized the black male. Having a relationship with a black man gives them added sexual pleasure because, they are transgressing. They're eating the forbidden fruit. They are doing what is forbidden, what is proscribed by society, by culture. Are you getting my point? Now, Moses actually talks about an incident in Hyde Park when he is approached by a white man who tells him, "You are the right man." Just think about it. So, in a way, he is the creature of the white folks' sexual fantasy. But the situation is complicated. If on the one hand there is the racial dimension of it, then on the other hand, there is also a gendered aspect. In some cases, the white women prove gullible. For example, Captain, the Nigerian man, for example, is a brutally cynical man. For him, white women are only that much of money. More than the sexual thrill, it is the purse strings of the white women that actually appeal to him. Okay. Now, racism is a two-edged sword. If on the one hand, it is the white folk the white majority that perpetrates racism, then inversely, the black men, the West Indians, they also exhibit certain facets of their own racism. They gel together in the form of a tight-knit ball of a community. So these are the themes. You all know that there is the question of welfare state, because we are talking about the post-Second World War situation. Someone like Clement Attlee. You think about it. The year in which this was published was also the year in which Look Back in Anger was also published. Okay. This was a time when Look Back in Anger was also published. Can anyone tell me when was The Less Deceived published by Philip Larkin? One of you just check it. The Less Deceived, and the Whitsun Weddings. When were these uh, books published?
Sir, Less Deceived in
Less
1955.
And the Whitsun Weddings? Come on, tell me. The Whitsun Weddings?
Sir, 1964.
19?
64.
So just think about it. The Less Deceived was published in 1955. This particular novel was published in 1956. Look Back in Anger was published in 1955. So this was, in a way, the response to the welfare state and its failings by the entire spectrum of British society. Okay. Coming back. Think about it. The question of community is something that is again morally and practically ambivalent. Because, on the one hand, there is the question of memory that links these immigrants from the West Indies, or even these black or colored individuals, because they are all parts of the diasporic population, notwithstanding their racial differences. On the other hand, you see, memory is something that is also very, very problematic. On the one hand, it actually gives you some kind of a consolation. On the other hand, it gives you some kind of pain. Last question. Yes. Uh, Coming back, there are two terms that I would like you to remember. One is nostalgia, longing for the past. The other one is nostophobia, fear of the past. Both things are operative in this particular narrative, if you read it. Okay. So the major themes, for example, you think about it. There are certain members of the West Indian immigrant community that want to live as honest workers. They have self-prestige. So they want to work for their upkeep. There are others who want to live on charity. And Moses, even though he wants to remain an honest worker, he realizes that some of his fellows have lived on government charity and have saved up considerably. So even though it is morally reprehensible for someone to live on charity, sometimes it so happens that they are the winners. They benefit. They are more successful. And they are less unhappy, less unfortunate. You see, someone like Moses wants to achieve upward social mobility through honest means of labor, dedication, efficiency, and all that. But he fails. He knows that it is very difficult to be socially successful or financially stable in England, in the United Kingdom. But he is caught in the trap of the promise of upward mobility. Even though it is impossible to attain, at least very, 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 very difficult. I am stressing this word very by repeating it 4 times. Difficult to achieve social mobility, upward mobility. He can advise Galahad, the young man, to go back to Trinidad, but he cannot do that. Moses cannot do that because Moses knows that going back to Trinidad will be tantamount to admitting defeat and giving in to the situation. Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir.
So these are the things that we have to understand in any discussion of the lonely learners. So from next day, today, sometime or other, I am going to give you a set of topics that you may find useful in preparing for the lonely learners as a viable exam proposition. You know? As always, I will give you a set of 8 suggested topics. I don't claim that this list has got anything to do with the exam purpose, but at least it will give you some idea of what you are actually trying to digest as a postgraduate text. Any question or comments?
Sir, Old English diplomacy is a kind of stratagem, kind of skill of management or art of dealing with people. Old English diplomacy.
Diplomacy can mean 2 things. The art of dealing with people with skill and tact, or the occupation and the proficiency of dealing with international relationships. So by referring to the old British diplomacy, The writer here is trying to point out how apparently polite and civil, but actually ruthless, the British society could be. You know, this is something that you do not find only here. You know, somehow this tact and apparent politeness hides the ruthless, almost impartial personal efficiency of the British attitude, both official and individual. So even though racism is not overtly manifested or promoted, it is for all intents and purposes deliberated upon and acted upon. Is there any other question?
Sir, sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
The deja vu that Moses feels when Galahad experiences the experiences of Moses himself. Sir, is it the mixed feeling of his past memory being mixed with his nostrophobia and nostalgia?
See, because both these men, in spite of their differences in age and experience of London life are concerned, they are both black men. They are both living in the mid 1950s. So the kind of experience that they encounter in most cases are the same, or at least similar. Now, in the case of their London experiences, most of them are green ones. So obviously, as an escape mechanism, as a survival strategy, they sometimes think about the past. But at the same time, drawing sustenance from the past, they are made pitifully aware of their dismal reality, present reality. So while talking about their old memories at one time, you will see that Moses becomes very sober. He thinks that it is morally and practically impossible, at any rate counterproductive, to be happy about the past. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So first part, sir.
Yes.
Present achievements. Sir, even at the present day, why black people are exploited, sir? At present days, even many apartheid or segregation laws has been made out, or where there is literary rate is very high. Sir, is it hatred against the black people which has been continuously going on for many years?
No, it has it has always been there. It has always been there. You know, as Orientalism has pointed out, um, black men, the black communities, even the people of color, there is always a kind of a differentiation. The white on the one hand and the rest on the others. There are hierarchies. There is a social hierarchy. Yes, the blacks, the browns, the yellows, the yellow ones, the Mongoloid. These are differentiated. But by and large, their fate is a common fate of marginalization. Because the white have been historically the dominant group, especially after the Renaissance, after the Enlightenment. They have always tried to look down upon the rest of humanity. Pride is something that is in a way a bulwark against shame, against poverty, against all kinds of difficult situations. Be that pride caused by personal achievement, family prominence, or racial domination. Pride is something that actually binds the white men together and induces in them some kind of a common response to the other skin colors. Any other question? No more questions? Okay, in that case, Shamim Siddiq will remove me from the meeting.